This is a funny interview for me because thinking about it just really pragmatically, I'm out like prospecting people for my coaching thing. Then you and I start talking, and I'm like, man, I love what you guys are working on. I love how you started this business and your background. I am so excited to introduce Christian to my small little YouTube channel, but I know that there's people on my channel who are really big into growth in all arenas. So health, fitness, and a lot of people that are entrepreneurs and some spiritual people as well. I have a lot of faith-based entrepreneurs. But Christian, I would love you to tell us about 99 Counties, what it is, and how you got started.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me, Perry, and truly humbled that you're that interested in what we're doing. You know, we're really blessed to have this awesome mission and these great products to tell people about. So 99 counties, we are on a mission to change people's relationship with food. There are 99 counties in the great state of Iowa, and the mission of the business is to bring back small regenerative family farms to those 99 counties. So we're talking grass-fed, grass-finished beef, pastured pork, pastured chicken, lamb, bison, basically animals on the land the way nature intended for meat to be raised. I think meat is a controversial topic these days, and for good reason. Most of the meat we produce in this country and around the world is raised in a way that produces a product that's not great for people or the environment, or even really for the animals, if you think about their life. So what I'm describing is most meat is produced in feedlots or in confined areas. And that, rightfully so, has led a lot of people to think it's not healthy or it's not very humane. And that's true. But the way animals are meant to be raised and the way the farmers we work with do it is really beautiful and really harmonious. They say flora and fauna, and that means plants and animals. And all natural ecosystems are supposed to have a balance of both. And in Iowa, in the 99 counties of Iowa, and also in the surrounding states, what's happened with industrialized agriculture over time is we've reduced the land to be basically factories for one thing or another. And so the Midwest, that's particularly corn and soybeans. And what happens when you have less diversity of crops and animal life is it's toxic for the environment because you have to raise things in an unsustainable way. The good news is there's a great way to do agriculture, which is cows out on the pasture, moving about, kind of rotating the way that they used to when they had predators in nature, having chickens out in the land, having pigs, having lamb. And so we work with small family farms to bring our customers the most delicious, the most nutrient-dense products possible, like our ground beef, which is a top seller. You can see the color, like the rich redness of it. And I'll stop before going too long. But we have lots of great products that I'm excited to share more with you and your community.
Well, it's funny because I'm excited. My delivery just came a little bit ago, like I was saying, an hour ago. And I'm excited. I haven't gotten to cook anything just yet. I'm a slow cooker, so like it's going to take me a while to go through, but I'm really excited about a couple things. One thing that I saw when I was putting my box together was the beef bacon. I had never seen anything like that. And for me, I've been trying to eat more of like a kosher diet because I do wonder if you look at the Middle East, the Mediterranean diet or whatever seems to be like a real thing. And I wonder if it's like a lot of these filter animals, whether it be shellfish and things, like if there's any credence to like, should we be consuming as much of them? And so I was excited to see the extensive list of chicken and beef products on there. I wanted to get beef sticks too, because I consume a junk ton of beef jerky, grass-fed beef jerky, which is super expensive. But what I want to talk to you about is I want to go a little bit more personal, and I want to take this in two ways if you're okay with it. But like, all this is great. Like, and I know the product is cool. I've just seen the color and seeing how it was packaged. So many things I've ordered that come frozen, like, and they, FedEx is always a little slow. And so it got here this afternoon today, and it's like, this stuff is still incredibly well packed. So I wanted to mention that. But why is this important to you? Like, why is regenerative farming important to you? And then can we talk about the business side of like why, the personal side of the startup for you? Can we go down both of those paths? So one is like, why the startup, and like, can you be real about some of the challenges, and would you recommend it going startup life for everyone? And then why this industry? Like, why food? Why regenerative farming? Why nutrient dense food? Is it really a thing? I know a lot of skeptics with organic and grass fed. They don't believe it. They just think it's people just want your money and it's a scam. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I would love to. And it's a very personal issue to me because I care a lot about it. So I'm excited to share about it. So, why this company? Why these products? I always struggle to do this because there's so many reasons. First and foremost is human health, which we'll talk about. Second is the impact on the environment and the planet. Third is the impact on the communities, like the people and also the environment where the food is raised. And I can keep going, but let's just keep it to that. Let's keep it to human health. Let's keep it to kind of planet or environmental effect. And then lastly, but also very importantly, the community, meaning the people and the economy. So human health, my mom was always, my friends thought she was weird. Like we would go to these health food stores growing up. Like, so we always, she wouldn't buy flour from the store. She would like make her own. And I'm very grateful and lucky for that. And I actually, when I started this company, I probably didn't realize how much of a through line the health thing was. It's just kind of how I was raised, but also I had some health challenges about 10 years ago when I came out of a very stressful finance job, and I had these gut issues. And through a long path, I ended up really doing a food elimination diet and doing effectively a paleo diet, which I've mostly been on. And so even prior to starting this company, I'd been mostly on this journey to discovering that whole foods, and in particular meat, especially meat, if it's without chemicals and antibiotics and raised in nature, is really good for you and really much more what our bodies over thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years have evolved to consume. And so the health part of it is really important to me because so many of the diseases and illnesses and obesity that we face are really just a result of what people are consuming. So fundamentally, the food that we're putting out there that arrived at your house today, that I have here, if you eat it, it results in better health for you. And I think, that's where everything starts for everyone. Health is wealth. So the health is a really big piece of it. Secondly, and this is actually where I really first came to it, was the environmental piece, which, I think, honestly, amongst our customer base, I think half are really passionate about that. And the other half might be a bit skeptical, which is fair because I think that there are different ways to understand, what's good for the environment or the planet. And I'll just share where I came from. I used to live in San Francisco, and during COVID, we had this issue where there were all these forest fires and the sky turned red. And we also constantly would have droughts and floods. And so you couldn't live there and not really think, hey, the changing climate is kind of a problem. And so I was going to work every day at this startup that was in the insurance space. And I just ultimately didn't feel that it had a mission every day where I was excited about the impact I was having in the world. And so I set out on this crusade to start a business that did something, better for the planet. And that's, that can be a climate change narrative. It can also just be hey, I love to fish. I love to ski. I love to swim in the oceans. Like, I just want like a cleaner, greener planet. And so I spent a year trying to find a business to start. And, I started off looking at electric vehicles and solar panels and probably what people probably more traditionally think of as good for the planet. And a lot of people would not think, meat as the answer, although I very much am convinced it is. And so about 3 months into this journey, this was in the year of 2021, I stumbled upon this book called Animal Vegetable Junk by Mark Bittman, who's a New York restaurateur. And it chronicled the history of food systems and food production kind of from tens of thousands of years ago to where we got today, touching upon a lot of the topics that I've brought up, like human health, but not only that, like environmental health, and basically how we went from a food system that, produced really good health outcomes for people and had the planet in balance to this highly industrialized way of producing food that we have today. And in there was a kernel of something really interesting to me, which was this concept of soil carbon sequestration. Now, at the time I'm learning about this, I'm living in San Francisco, where the venture capital firms that I'm familiar with are putting lots of money into big companies to build machines to suck carbon out of the air to then pump it underground, which, people found compelling in and of its own right. And then I learned that literally the way you farm and the way you raise livestock, if done a certain way, results in more carbon in the soil. Very simple. Photosynthesis. Plants consume carbon. It's what they use to build root structures. And literally, grasslands, which cover 1/3 of the planet, are one of the greatest carbon sinks we have, period. So I learned about this and I realized, just in terms of impact, but also just opportunity in terms of a place people weren't looking, the idea of doing agriculture the right way could have profound implications for the health of the planet. And maybe there was even like a business opportunity there. So I decided I really wanted to work in agriculture, specifically meat. I rented a pickup truck. I drove across the country from Montana to Pennsylvania, visiting farms along the way. And I ended up meeting someone. I actually didn't meet my co-founder of 99 Counties on that trip, but I met someone who knew him, was like, oh, you've got to talk to Nick Wallace, who's got this vision for 99 Counties. It's, kind of what you're talking about. And so then we ended up getting together and ended up starting the business, and here we are. And just bringing it back, right? So I talked about human health. I talked about kind of how I came at it from an environmental standpoint. The third bucket is community. And I think, unfortunately, the trend we have in U.S. agriculture and kind of worldwide is farms just get bigger. The head of the USDA 40 years ago, Earl Butz, was famous for saying, get big or get out. Meaning to the U.S. farmer, if you don't get really big, you won't survive because this is a commodity game and you've got a really big farm. And that's what's produced this food system we have today that has a lot of issues. And the reality is smaller farms are great for farmers, of a certain scale, and great for consumers. And we need more of that. And so 99 Counties, we work with today 22 small family farms spread across mostly Iowa, some Minnesota and Wisconsin. When you buy our product, you're supporting the jobs of these farmers and then these small processors that are why you get, really cool, really high quality packaged meat like what you've received from jobs at these small towns in rural America. And it creates community, not just amongst our suppliers, but also amongst our customers. And so those are the three things that stand out to me: is the health impact, the impact on the environment, planet, and then the impact on local communities.
Yeah, there's so much that I want to go into. I mean, one of the reasons I was excited to reach out initially and just have a conversation with you was there's so much talk around grass-fed beef and omega balances, like omega-3 and omega-6 balances. And so I have a brother that's young, in his 50s, and has early onset dementia, and it's been this whole thing, and it was like a nightmare, and it's been an ongoing nightmare, and it's just so crazy how that can happen at such a young age. And so obviously there's this whole metabolic gym component, but then it's also like, what are we putting in? What am I eating? How processed is it? And then I started getting crazy with like wild caught salmon, and I'm like, the beef at the grocery store is hard to find the level of grass beef or the grass-fed beef products that I want. It's easy to find ground beef, like Aldi or pretty much anywhere you can find grass-fed ground beef, but it's harder to get specialty cuts. I've never seen things like, as I was saying, beef bacon or like some of the other specialty things that you guys had, which this is like a great segue into. And my mom was like yours as well. So I laugh when you talk about your mom going to these crazy like hippie stores and whatever, because my mom had breast cancer 3 times, which makes no sense to me because usually most people have 2 breasts. So I'm like, I don't know where the 3rd time comes in. But like, we went to all these stores growing up because she was trying to mitigate, just trying to figure out, like, I really think food is a component of this. And the 90s was a wild time, right? We added trans fats in, and cigarettes were still like partly in vogue in the beginning, and like all this crazy stuff's going on. And it's like, every time man gets involved and says, oh, we can make a better fat, we can make a better sweetener, we can make a better synthetic thing, it's like, it doesn't seem to end well. But this is a great segue to go into and I'm just going to jump right into why not ButcherBox, right? Like, you see so much, I get so much targeted stuff from them before I found you guys. Like, what's the difference with ButcherBox? What makes them different versus 99 Counties?
So at 99 Counties, I can rattle off the names of the farmers we work with and tell you what counties they're in, like John and Beth Hoagland in Lovelia, Iowa, who we just did a study on omega-6 to 3 ratios, and it's on the blog, and it's super exciting, right? So we're small, meaning we know exactly where everything is coming from. And in fact, ButcherBox, they're a very sophisticated company. They probably do know which farms are coming from, but those farms are a lot bigger. those farms also happen to be predominantly in New Zealand. And not a knock on their practices. They practice great agriculture over there and they produce a great product. Happens to be like 8,000 miles across the globe. And so, a big part of eating healthier is trying to know where your food's coming from and also having it sourced more locally. We can and we do produce incredible grass-fed, grass-finished beef right here in Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, other places in the US. And so that's the single biggest difference between us is the sourcing, because so much of their supply chain is elsewhere. They're also a much, much bigger company. They do 600 million of revenue a year. Their founder was on a podcast talking about that. That means they're doing something right, by the way. But it also means, the CEO isn't having, the one running customer service and reaching out to customers. That's me. That's what I do all day long. So I can assure you that just by virtue of us being smaller, there's a lot more care and attention to, each individual customer. And again, I don't like to throw stones. I think ButcherBox does a better job than most of the meat that's out there, to be candid. But between us and them, I promise we have a higher quality product, better customer service, and also that you're supporting farmers closer by. And what the other thing I would add is we also have a higher standard when it comes to the pork and the chicken we source. There's all these buzzwords in agriculture. There's pasture raised, there's organic, there's humanely raised. Well, a lot of the organic chicken and pork that you get at the store or from other meat subscription companies is raised in confinement, because to be organic means that the feed it's consuming is organic, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's raised on pasture. We have the most incredible partner for our chicken, for example, this group called Tree Range Farms in Minnesota, and the farms are in Iowa and Minnesota, that creates these kind of jungle-like habitats for the chickens. And it's really the closest thing to like what wild chickens once were. And so not only are we ensuring that everything they eat is chemical-free, GMO-free, glyphosate-free, antibiotic and hormone-free, but also that they're running around outside and getting a lot of exercise. And then our pork, here's the bacon, one of our top sellers. Most bacon you get that's pasture-raised, this is pasture-raised, but most bacon out there that you get that's pasture-raised is not chemical-free, because it's much more cost-effective to produce a grain for pork to consume that is GMO-free, but that has been sprayed with glyphosate at some point. And so something that we do that is really hard because it makes our product more expensive is we have two amazing farmers, and that's why we're constantly out of stock of bacon, who raise those pigs on pasture, but it's also completely chemical and GMO free. No glyphosate, no antibiotics, no hormones, nothing like that. So yeah, I think it's the sourcing and the supply chain being domestic and the higher quality of what we source.
So I want to make two statements, and then I'd like you to correct me on them if I'm off. One is a lot of people are hearing about Iowa and Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Midwest, or whatever. But you guys ship domestically, right? Like I'm over in Pennsylvania and I can get the product here now. Like you guys aren't just relegated to that part of the United States. You guys will ship coast to coast?
We do. Yep. All lower 48 states. When we started the business, we actually were only in Iowa and Chicago. And then we just had so much demand from people elsewhere in the US. And thanks to, dry ice, and I just threw away my box, but we have all recyclable, sustainable packaging. And as you've experienced, it works very well.
Yeah, it does. It's crazy because I have had other things like from Factor or whatever. Like I've gotten meal subscription things when I've been really busy and I'm like, I'll just try this for a week. And almost exclusively, I always have a problem, like especially in the summer months, right? Like we're here, it's August 14th. It's been like 100 degrees for the last couple of weeks. And like, I was really dreading going to the gym today because I'm like, I'm going to miss the box. Like it's going to be a nightmare. And like it came and this stuff, I mean, it was like incredibly cold. So that makes me laugh.
I appreciate that, but I'll tell you, like, to be honest, 99% of the time it works. And then 1% of the time it doesn't work because there just end up being errors. We ship via FedEx, they're great partners, but like nothing's perfect. And I share it just to be transparent, but also to tell you, how far we'll go. This morning I happened to live in Miami. When I started the business, I was in Chicago. My fiance is from down here. And anyway, one of our customers splits time between Chicago and Miami. And they sent me a frantic email last night. Oh my gosh, it was supposed to go to my Chicago address, but went to Miami address. It's all going to go to waste. I said, well, this is lucky. I live 40 minutes away. I'll go get it, make sure it doesn't go to waste, put it in my freezer. We can eat it, and we will ship you a replacement free of cost because, we are nothing without our customers. And so a couple of weeks ago, we had an issue where the package came a day later than it was supposed to, just a screw up in the logistics. And usually, there's enough dry ice there that a day late, it's fine, but it was so hot that it wasn't. And so we're overnighting a replacement to the customer because, like I said, this 99% of the time, there's no issues. I'm glad you had no issues, but when there are, we make sure to take care of it and make things right for the customer.
It's funny that you say that. I was literally going through a book yesterday from Daniel Priestley called Oversubscribed. And in that book, he says so many people spend money acquiring new customers versus just taking care of the customers they already had. He's like, if you want to spend money to get new customers, take care of the ones you have because they'll get you referrals. And that was kind of like an eye-opening quote from him that stuck with me and reminds me of what you're saying. The next piece that I wanted to touch on was going back to pesticides, glyphosate, and all of this stuff, because I know there are so many people, and I also laugh because just yesterday, a gentleman that I interviewed previously, his name is Amun Razin, and he is focused on total, he's ex-Marine guy, and he's very into vegan, this whole vegan lifestyle thing, which I do believe in fiber, and I believe there's a lot of benefits to phytonutrients from plants. But I think a mixed diet, for me personally, I'm I don't know why we have things like canines or why we have enzymes that break down fish or meat in our gut if we don't need them. But I understand where he's coming from because I thought I had alpha gal. I couldn't eat beef. 2 years ago, I couldn't eat beef at all. I had serious problems with it. And I thought oh, I'm just allergic to it. There's something wrong with it. And then I started working on this thing that I call a brain bowl for my brother. I'm pretty sure I repaired my gut. And then all of a sudden, I exclusively eat wild caught salmon, beef products, grass-fed beef products, and I'll have chicken occasionally. But the statement that I wanted to make was around glyphosate and pesticides. So many people don't understand. There are a lot of people on both sides that have seen Netflix documentaries and they understand, okay, cows are farting and chickens are doing crazy stuff and it's ruining the atmosphere. They've gotten that far. But what I don't think a lot of people understand is the delicate balance of all of these different microbiomes that are a part of our consumption. And now I even mean orally, our mouths, right? People are using toothpaste that does all kinds of different stuff. Then the soil, what you guys do, cows eat some of the soil when they're pulling grass up, right? They're consuming bits and pieces of the soil. And so if the soil's got pesticides, junk, all this stuff in it, it's where do we think that that's going to go? And so in my mind, when I'm hearing people say, and I have family that is on the wealthier side and they think organic, non-GMO, it's all a scam. And I hope that they never get any of these serious terminal illnesses and these crazy things that we're seeing people struggle with at such young ages now. But the one thing that I know that I've seen for sure in white papers is it's pretty well studied that all of these sprays are some level of endocrine disruptors where it's they make it hard. My understanding is endocrine disruption is DNA, or basically when cells go to make new cells, it disrupts that process from occurring. And so you can have a liver cell that's tagged as an eye cell, which is what essentially creates aging and all these other I don't know, inflammatory markers. But what else would you say to someone that's a little bit skeptical of this costs more money? Why would I spend so much more? For me, I get it. I'm I want to be at the highest level of my mental, physical, emotional state. And I believe consuming this level of food, it's going to give me a better experience in life. I'm going to get the nutrients from things like beef liver, where we're so many of us are zinc or copper deficient. And I'm so focused on this. But what would you say to someone that's exposed to this for the first time? Maybe they go to Aldi and they get the cheapest cut of beef. And now it's someone's proposing they spend 4x or 2x on it. What research other than the omega stuff, or what convincing body of knowledge have you run across for you where you're I'm never going to eat that junk again?
I think part of it is let's just take beef. I have been to feedlots and it is I visited a few on this farm tour and I was meeting farmers. At that time, I had like a whole different like idea in and around insurance that I wanted to do, like to create an insurance product that would incentivize people to do regenerative agriculture. And then we realized, hey, this is the hard thing, the thing that needs doing, which is like find the farmers that are doing it the right way, connect it with the consumers, create a market, inspire more people to do it. Anyway, back when I was visiting farmers everywhere and I went to some feedlots, I needed to like act like I was cool with what was going on and try to get along and all that. And I just remember being around these, like the smell was nauseating and the way they were crowded together. And I don't think you can see that or experience that and believe that's going to have a healthy outcome. Insofar as the chemical part of it, I mean, a couple of stories. So first of all, glyphosate, which is sprayed on like 95% of the acres in the Midwest to produce monocrop corn and soy, which then goes into feedlots to feed traditional cattle, which are like 99% of the cheap meat you're going to buy at the store. By the way, let alone cows have 7 stomachs. That's because they're designed to consume grass, something we couldn't like make use out of. But they have those 7 stomachs to process it correctly and turn it into something useful. They're not designed to eat corn and soybeans. But let alone that, so much of if what you're consuming has been touched by glyphosate or other chemicals, there have been lawsuits settled for over $1 billion for Roundup, which is the same thing as glyphosate, just at the consumer level. For people who've sued them for cancer, you don't settle $1 million lawsuit if you haven't had a disease. And then, more personal story, the original founder and visionary who I worked with behind 99 Counties, Nick Wallace, he had cancer and meat cancer when he was 19 or 20 in Iowa. And growing up, and he worked on farms in the area, he was exposed to chemicals. And it's pretty clear to him that there was a connection. And I think to address the cost point, we have a great deal, our subscription product that you signed up for $169. You get anywhere from 10 to 15 pounds of meat a month. I would say the average person does that on kind of a 6-week cadence. So say you get 8 boxes per year and you're spending about $1,200. That product is probably, I don't think you're going to go to the store and buy like literally the worst thing you can buy. Like most people are probably going to buy a product that looks good. Our product is probably, let's call it 30% more expensive when it's all said and done. And so I would just say, would you rather spend $1,200 a year with us, know that you're consuming the healthiest food possible, which hopefully means you're healthier and you're having to spend less money on your healthcare bills in the future? Or would you rather spend $900 a year at Costco, so save a little bit of money, and have a risk that the food isn't as healthy? And oh, by the way, you're not supporting John and Beth Hoagland in Lovelia, Iowa. You're not supporting the small meat processing plant in Wisconsin where Ron Ufta works and is employing, a lot of great people who are seeing their career opportunities expand because of the growth of their business that we're supporting.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I what you said that's like probably the biggest one for me, which is like everything is deferred choices. It's like, okay, like I can not spend this money. I can spend this money on healthcare later on, which the healthcare system, like, let's not even go down there unless you need a surgeon. I think it's like there are so many things being prescribed which are highly problematic. But it's like you can spend it now or you can spend it later, but you're going to spend it at some point. So I would rather be proactive about it. And yeah, for me, it's a huge difference. And my family this year they've seen me change. They've seen my body change. They've seen my brain change. And so I think a lot of people in my family, all of a sudden, they're starting to consume beef. And now that beef is grass-fed beef. And now it's like there's this whole thing that's happening in the people around my life. And it's hard for me. I'm a little guy. I'm like 150 pounds and I'm like 5'9". And so for me, getting my level of like 150 grams of protein, 160 grams of protein a day, it's hard. It's hard. And it's like, I also want to eat stuff that tastes good, because how many freaking like Think Thin or Quest bars with all the crap that's in those can you consume? Like maybe I'll do one here or there, but like, I don't want to be getting 50% of my protein requirement from whey powder.
Well, and all that stuff has some form of sugar in it. And like more and more, like the number one thing about everything that's bad for you is sugar. And our meat's got no sugar in it, but super tasty.
No sugar. How sad.
Yeah.
It might be the only industry that hasn't been totally taken over from like the sugar lobby quite yet. But the last thing that I want to talk about before we close out, because I haven't even realized, but we've already been talking for a good 30 minutes. talk to us about this lifestyle. I mean, obviously you come from the West Coast. I didn't know that you grew up in San Francisco.
No, I grew up in Connecticut, in what used to be the dairy capital of America, near Sharon and Goshen, Connecticut, and then Wisconsin happened. And no one remembers that anyway. But I grew up in a small town in Connecticut, and then for work, I lived in San Francisco for a long time. And now I did live in Chicago. Now I'm in Miami, so I've been all over.
Well, I can relate with that. But tell me, like, there's a lot of people on my channel that they'll sidebar me. Like once I upload this video, I'll get comments from people like, I'm on the fence about starting a business. I'm almost ready. I'm like 80% all in. Like, I'm not sure. I'm scared. What do I do if I don't know? Like, I have this idea and I'm like ready to do it and I can pre-sell it and it's validated. And it's like, what's it like being on the other side? You've been doing this 3-4 years now. I think people think it's so easy. There are parts of it that are so easy. And then I think there's people on the other pole that it's like entrepreneurship seems so hard and so impossible. Can you talk to us about what the roller coaster is like?
Yeah, it's really hard. I don't recommend it to everyone. And I think there's a lot of cliches about it, most of which have been proven true to me. And I think if you go on Twitter, the blogosphere, I mean, I don't know who these people are who like every business they start is successful and they make it look so easy. Good for them, but I think that isn't the case for most of us. Now that said, it was something I really wanted to do, something I'm proud I've done, something that's been a tremendous learning experience. But it's so hard because of the uncertainty. And because, often we'll feel like it's just you against the world or you and your small team against the world. And I think, some cliches, your support system matters a lot. I'm fortunate to have a spouse and family that's, been super supportive. The original investors who were supportive, great customers. But at the end of the day, I think the fear of failure is really strong. And in some ways, some founders you see can be really cocky, maybe. And that's probably because that's a good trait, because doubting yourself is not good, although we all do it. So it's really hard. I think you have to, I just wanted to do it no matter what. And I care deeply about what we're doing. And that was always important to me. If the job were selling shoes, no disrespect to anyone who that's the line of work they're in, but like that just wouldn't get me out of bed every day. And when we have had hard moments where we didn't think we would make it as a company. And literally what I thought back to was like, here are the beef tenderloin tips, which is like basically filet cut into little pieces. And then it's more affordable. And here are chicken thighs that I just eat these like every night. And I think the products are so good. Like they're really tasty. And it's also just fun. Like when I go in our warehouse, I'm like a kid in the candy store with all the things we sell. And I have my moments of doubt. Absolutely. And I have my moments from like, why did I do this? And I probably would tell a lot of people not to do it. But if you're really passionate about what you're doing, and people around you that support you, you super highs and lows and you try to stay more in the middle, but it's hard.
So as we wrap up, where can people go if they're hearing about 99 Counties for the first time? Where should they go? 2 questions. Where can they go to try 99 Counties out? And what should they get or try as their first product? Like for 2 people. So you have people with big budgets that they're ready to go all in. They don't mind spending $100, $200 per grocery trip. Then you have people on the smaller side of a budget. They just kind of want to dip their toes in. Maybe they're not going to get grass-fed everything. They're still going to get some stuff somewhere else. What's one thing maybe they could buy for if they're getting started?
I would go to 99counties.com, click on Build Your Box. And, shipping's expensive, but we do free shipping for any subscription box. And I know everyone says it, but it truly is cancel anytime. You can do it yourself, or you just email us. I'll cancel it for you. I don't think you're going to want to cancel, but sign up for a subscription so you get free shipping. It's the smallest box. It's $169. My name, Christian, is a $25 off code. And so you can put that in, save money. And again, see what you think of it. No obligation to stick with it. In terms of the products, the chicken thighs are just amazing. They're incredible. The bacon, my mom was raving about it to me the other day. Like I would say to a bacon, ground beef, like best like bang for your buck and just super healthy and tasty. Like we do one of the items is like 3 pounds of ground beef. Like get some of that. And then don't have the props, but ribeyes are super popular. We also have a chuck eye steak, which is really tasty, but a better value. Like you'll get 2 of those instead of 1 ribeye. And the ground pork products are incredible. I mean, if you take our ground Italian sausage and the ground beef, and those are the 2 things you use for pasta bolognese, I mean, freaking people will think you're a better chef than you are. So those would be a few. Skirt steak, gotta know how to cook it right, gotta marinate it, can't over marinate it, cut against the grain, but that's a great product. So I could go on, but I think chicken thighs, bacon, maybe the chuck eye steak, some ground beef, and maybe ground Italian sausage to mix with the ground beef for pasta bolognese.
So in summary, head to 99counties.com, build your own box, use Christian, your name, as the promo code to get off their first order. And then can I selfishly ask one last question before we wrap up?
Sure.
What's the best way to thaw? I know this is so dumb, but it's
great.
Quick thaw, slow thaw.
Not which I am currently doing. So I have these out here from Frozen out here just so I could like wave them in front of the camera. 1,000,000% in the fridge.
Okay.
And so what I typically do, we've done a lot of things with our packaging to try to mitigate against there ever being leakage. The reality is, with frozen meat, when you vacuum seal it, it becomes smaller. And then as it thaws, it becomes bigger and there's pressure from the liquid, from the myoglobulin. And so just always put it in a little dish as you put it in the fridge. So this is a whole chicken. And so there are a couple ways you can do it. The number one way is to do it in the fridge over a day. And that way it gradually comes up to temperature. And then it can stay in the fridge another 2 days or so. But the great thing about this is you keep it frozen, it'll never spoil. When you know you're going to be eating, you put it in the fridge for a day, you're good to go. Now, if you're in a pinch and you're like, well, I want to cook it, I didn't thaw it out, all you got to do is give it a nice little water bath. Ideally in cold water, because again, the slower it comes up, the better. If you're in a rush, warm water. I suggest putting the package inside a different plastic bag as it thaws out, just in case there's any leakage. But yes, in that order, put it in some little bowl or on a plate in the fridge, give it a day. That's perfect. But alternatively, you can do a water bath. The other thing, very crucial, particularly with beef, after you've thawed it, do not take it out of the refrigerator and immediately throw it on the pan. That's going to shock it. You want the meat to come up to room temperature. It's going to be better for the flavor, but it's also going to be better for the searing, but also the tenderness, because you actually want it to come up to temperature and have those fibers start to break down. In some cultures, some marinades, you could leave it on the counter for 4 days. Now, the USDA doesn't recommend that. But generally speaking, particularly with beef, letting it more come up to room temperature before you cook it is really best practices.
Cool. Well, I'm so excited to get started this week. That reminds me, I have to take a couple things out and put them in the refrigerator now for tomorrow. Anything we missed? Anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
I'm sure I'll watch this later and think I forgot something. But no, thank you so much for having me on, Perry. Super excited to hear from your community. And, I think I was just before this meeting with the head of operations at Tree Range Farms, who we work with on this great chicken. And we were just comparing notes and some supply chain challenges and all that. And, we're really trying to grow this business steadily and slowly over time. And so we're really looking for just, 50 or so new customers each month to treat specially and kind of grow this business. And it's tough to balance the influx of supply and demand. And so if we can just have that steady drumbeat of growing this community, that would be really great. Thanks for having me on, and hope to hear from some of your community. Yeah, I hope that people take you up on the promo code. I know that there's people in my family that are interested.
I'm excited to talk to you again and see and do like maybe like a mini review, maybe share some recipe stories and things. So that would be fun. And then obviously just to see how the team is growing, new farms that you guys bring on, and just kind of stay updated with what's going on. But I mean,
yeah. By the way, sorry, we just added ground bison, so that's exciting. And goat is on the way, and we did just launch beef bacon burgers. So that we always kind of have new products coming, and that's always fun.
Oh, that's cool. Bison is pretty cool. Well, actually, when is that launching? Now I want to know. Is it already on the site?
The bison launched like a couple days ago. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's there. Yeah.
Cool. And people can put that, or you can already put it in your box when you build a box?
Yeah, well, good question. It's not, when you build your box, it's not one of the standard items you see. But as you go, like, do you want to add an add-on? It'll be there. Okay. But if you have any trouble with it, you just write into customer service, and it's me replying to you like after the fact, and I can just add it to your order too. So
cool deal. Well, Christian, thanks so much for making the time. It's always good chatting with you. I hope you have a great week, and I hope that I hope we're able to get 99 counties out there, and there's people that are excited to transform their health and their body because they heard this and they get it. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Perry.